You're going to be great. And welcome. You know, I have often joked that I'm one of those gay men that didn't get the gay gene. We're supposed to know what's fashionable and hip and hot and how to dress. So that's why I turned to friends and colleagues like Shaun Saunders. Welcome, Shaun.
Thank you, David, for having me.
You know, you have really got one of the best titles I've ever seen on a business card. Urban culturalist.
Yes.
What is an urban culturalist?
Well, years ago when I left sort of the regular world of sales and marketing, and I took a year sabbatical, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And in that journey, I found out my talents in sort of art culture. And so I put those two together, and I became the principal urban culturalist. I think it's something catchy. It's something that people will remember, and I think it resonates because it gives you that, what? So
well, that's so what, and also the first rule of PR, how do you become an expert? You tell people, I'm an expert. So you are the urban culturalist.
Yes.
No, but I mean, seriously, I've seen the events you've done over the last couple of years, and the events seem to attract this wonderful cross-section of the community. Gay, straight, younger, older. I mean, but they're all kind of hip and happening. Is that something you create consciously or magically happens?
It magically happens, and it's also something that I create consciously because I'm interested in people who are smarter than me. I'm interested in young people. I'm interested in people who are chic. I'm interested in the sort of how we communicate like graffiti artists. It's about movement, and it's about what's on the underground. It's about what's obvious. It's about what's visceral. It's about what's invisible. And so that is how we communicate. But people have, I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by the things that people say and people's perspective. And I love to be social. So I love to conversate with people and find out new ideas, the gossip, the skinny, what's going on, if I can learn something in that moment. And so all of that plays into sort of my crowd. I come from African American, certainly gay, but I have so many friends and so many across the planet.
I mean, what is the Shaun Saunders crowd? Like if I just happen to be at a party that you've put together, not for a client, but you know, people you're hanging with on the weekend or for brunch or whatnot, who's it going to be?
My friends tend to be fairly chic, so it's going to be a bit of the sort of the design crowd, a little bit of the fashion crowd, some tech. I think the current that runs through my friends without sounding superficial is that everyone is actually rather attractive or super smart. But within that, they're all good people, so I've been lucky enough to attract amazing souls and really good friends.
So what is it nowadays that makes someone, from a marketing standpoint, as you say, chic or attractive? Is it just a look, or is it a combination of a look and, as you say, a soul?
I think it has to do with anything that's internal, and it has to be soul-based. I think where sort of trends and what people are doing, it's about taking ownership of one's audience and creating experiences within those audiences. So San Francisco, with some of the trends that have been going on for the last 5 or 6 years, is that you'll find promoters who have sort of taken this approach of creating or buying a club or a restaurant so that their friends can come and hang out. So it's about being around your friends, the people who you call on the phone, who you text. And I think the idea is taking charge of this niche audience and really speaking to that niche audience in very specific and very obvious and very non-obvious ways. And so that's what I've tried to do with my business. Is everything that's sort of come to me has been via word of mouth or referral or just someone that I've met. And really I've tried to just work with interesting people and interesting ideas, and that is what I'm actually passionate about.
Is finding those interesting people and interesting ideas.
Something that is I can get my teeth into and really just get inside of it, whether it's a product or a person, and learn. And I think part of that learning is courtship with ideas. Like, what is this? Questioning things. It's, how does this work? What does it mean? And how is it serving, you know, sort of like a broader idea or an audience?
So what would be something that wouldn't interest Shaun Saunders into getting his teeth into? That you would just say, you know, that might be great for you, but that's not my thing.
Manual labor.
So you do all this without manual labor?
Correct.
So you have a huge staff. Is that what you're telling me?
In my head. In my head, I have a huge staff, but I'm not interested in mechanical things. I'm not interested in farming. I'm interested in being a part of an urban environment, something that's urbane. One of my biggest passions is cities. I love going to new cities and just really, really getting into what's going on the street. You know, what people are doing, the cafes, the restaurants, the socializing, things that have a social sort of DNA to them. I would rather go to a great bistro than go to a great museum.
Right. Now, when we talk about great cities, you know, we've both traveled a good deal, and here we are in San Francisco, which I love, and it's my home. But I've often thought San Francisco prides itself on being sister cities with Paris. San Francisco isn't Paris. San Francisco is a small little city, and sometimes gets accused of being a little provincial and a little, you know. Do you think that's part of its charm, or San Franciscans take themselves a little too seriously?
Well, I'm a native San Franciscan, so unlike most people, I'm a rare black jewel. But what that means is I think San Francisco has a lot going for it. Personally, I find it one note, and what I mean by that is that it does have a small town atmosphere, but I also think that's what's attractive. I mean, I think some of the drawbacks of what San Francisco used to be, it used to be a little bit more inclusive, and it used to be a little bit more organic and artsy. And I think the gentrification has certainly changed that soul and that nuance. And
in a negative way.
And not such a, you know, it used to have a hippie, edgier vibe to it. But I think with anything, you know, places grow, things change, and you have to grow with it and then be adaptable to it. I think San Francisco is incredibly exciting these days, certainly with what's going on with the restaurants scene. I certainly think that some of the tech scene, and I think where the tech scene has gone is they've created a lot of interesting ways with chats and they've added a lifestyle component to that industry. And I think that San Francisco is on fire right now with opportunity. Now, Paris, in and of itself, I lived there in 1993 after I graduated from college, and Paris is the center of my being. I mean, it is one of the most amazing cities in the world because it's so obvious. History, art, culture, walking down the street, and the people. But I think the DNA of that city is about the people, mostly, is that they really, the languages, the culture.
How much of San Francisco's DNA is tied into this cross current of the tech community and the gay community? I mean, those are two things, like when you're outside of the country and you say, I'm from San Francisco, people, it seems like at some point the conversation gets to one of those two things. Let's talk about milk, or let's talk about Facebook. Right. You know, that intersection seems to me to be something that's making San Francisco especially hot and trendy now in a good way. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. I mean, I think anything is in the messaging and how that messaging is being circulated and, for lack of a better reference, pimped out into the ether. And so those are two messages, the DNA of San Francisco and the history. You know, we look at, you know, what the gay community did and how it participated in its own evolution. And then when you look at tech, you know, you look at all this idea about innovation and the rise and fall of the great tech titans. But it's that story about, you know, that innovation. It's that story about great ideas. And there's that journey that all of these companies are going through that are creating something. It's almost like the gold rush from 1849. So it's got all of this interesting alchemy that's playing out. And because of that, it tends to influence so it's almost like a magnet, you know, that sort of circulates throughout the world. And it's also a bit of a transient city in that obviously people live here and they enjoy the beauty of the city, but it brings fresh talent. And
people still want to live here.
People still want to live here, but I think the eyes that are looking at this city for its cues, whether it be political, social, and, you know, tech and tech innovation. So it's a city of innovation.
So you still think that we're pushing the envelope and creating trends?
Absolutely.
So I know you're fascinated by how people communicate. What are some of the communication trends or forward-looking things that San Francisco is exporting to the world right now that people in Paris or Shanghai or whatnot, New York, go, oh, that's a San Francisco thing in a good way?
Well, I mean, if you just look at what Twitter's created, it's this really, I think there's a couple things. It's about taking a condensed message of 140 characters and really expressing yourself, you know, because it's about, I mean, we're all a short attention span theater. And also how are we using short format conversation, whether it be video. And I think that's where we've been strongest. I mean, there's certainly other areas and other ways. And I think creating, you know, everyone lives in a silo. And what I mean by that is everyone lives within their own matrix of their friends and their community. But I think we've also exported that, you know, communicating through these social media in visceral ways, in that your silo is now becoming someone else's silo. And so, you know, I can add a friend and delete a friend.
We've been speaking with Shaun Saunders about what is trendy and what San Francisco trends go out to the world. Next, we're going to find out who's fashionable and who's not. I'm scared. We're going to be speaking with Bertrand Pellegrin. Thanks very much.
Thank you.